What's up, everybody? This is Jose from Southern Life. Welcome to beautiful Sarasota, Florida. On today's video, we're going to spend some time in Sarasota and beautiful places like this in Lakewood Ranch to understand exactly if undocumented people are still the mass of the labor force here in Florida in fields like landscaping, construction, all of the hard labor that happens in the state. But I'm also going to show you guys the beauty of this city and this area. So I hope you guys enjoy today's video, which should give you a nice mix between current news, like what's happening with immigration, and we're just enjoying the beauty of Florida. Welcome to Sarasota, Florida. Doesn't really matter what immigration laws are doing when it comes to who's working in Florida. Things really haven't changed too much in this state. Even if it's a police station here in Florida, the people cutting the grass and doing all of the work continue to be Hispanics, and you're not going to see too many people of U.S. nationality doing all this work. They exist, and there's starting to be more of them, but overall, most of the hard labor is still being done by Hispanics. Predominantly Central Americans like Hondurans, Nicaraguans, and Guatemalans. Hispanics continue to be the labor force in Florida, and a lot of them are still undocumented, and that doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. Alright guys, so let's start off by going into a nice part of Sarasota like Lakewood Ranch, where there's a lot of landscaping work that needs to be done, a lot of property maintenance. So we're at a construction site here in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. And these guys look like they might be Honduran, maybe Guatemalan. Now, I have noticed more Americans on construction sites. Driving around today, I've noticed more Americans on construction sites than I've ever seen before here in Florida. Recently, I saw a news article saying that Florida has had more undocumented people detained than anywhere else in the United States. And the first thing that came to mind was, is that a surprise? I mean, it's a well-stocked pond. You know, you're fishing in a well-stocked pond. The state of Florida also has more undocumented people than any other state, more than Texas, more than California. No other state has more undocumented people than Florida, so it shouldn't be a surprise that Florida has more ICE arrests than any other state because, well, you have more undocumented people than any other state. If you're fishing in a well-stocked pond, you're going to catch a lot of fish. Now, in the state of Florida, construction sites, it's a felony to trespass. So, you know, the state laws lend itself very well for the industry to use undocumented workers because, after all, you're not even allowed to step foot in a construction site in Florida. It's a felony to trespass into a construction site. One recent change that you're seeing here in the state of Florida recently is that many people who are undocumented are wearing masks to cover their faces so that you cannot tell by looking at them what nationality they are or what their complexion is. So as of lately, it's become far too common to see people working in construction sites with complete face masks. Alright guys, now we're in the waterside part of Lakewood Ranch. Nice little area. Fast growing area too. They're building stuff left and right out here. Here's a job you're not going to see too many US citizens doing: landscaping. It goes without saying that even the police department, the precincts, the substations are handled by undocumented workers. So one thing you see happening now more than ever is guys getting dropped off and leaving their equipment behind. So like what this crew here did is they just left their equipment on the side of the road, and now they think we're trying to steal it because I was taking pictures of it for the video. But anyways, what they do now is they just leave their equipment behind and drop off the workers with the equipment, and then the truck drives off. And then if there is an immigration raid, it's on the workers. So you're driving around and you're seeing like all this landscaping equipment just left everywhere on the side of the road, and the trucks drive off, leaving the workers and the equipment behind. And this has actually become pretty common here in Florida now, something I've never seen before because you risk having your equipment stolen. One of the most obvious changes you've seen recently is people covering their faces, people leaving their equipment behind. which is something you never see in Florida. Like these guys here putting all their equipment on the ground, it's bizarre. Like you've never seen that in Florida. But it's just one of the ways people are adapting to these immigration changes, and they feel like if they just do this, then there's less risk of the immigration busting the company for using undocumented workers. So here in Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch particularly, the amount of new home construction and commercial construction still going in is insane. But even with all the things that are happening with immigration, here we are in Sarasota today looking around, and most of these construction sites that are going in, a lot of the workers are undocumented. A lot of people are covering their faces, which is something you didn't see too much in the past. So definitely, people are going to continue to work, and this is still a thing here in Florida. Like I said, Florida had more undocumented workers than any other state, so it's questionable how much things will really change in Florida. In front of us is a church being built, and you can see there's scaffolding workers all the way up there, about 4 stories high. And these guys are going to be Nicaraguans, Honduran, Central Americans. Not everybody knows how to do this type of work. For the most part, this isn't something you're going to learn in a school. Now, Lakewood Ranch continues to be a fast-growing area. They're still building houses, communities, everything's still going up out here. And for the most part, most of the workers are going to be undocumented still on all these construction sites. Everything here, from the landscaping, the construction, the maintenance, all that is done by undocumented people from Latin America. Where we are now in the state of Florida, we had a lot of population growth because of new home construction. What facilitated that new home construction was the presence of undocumented people. Basically, all of the maintenance and all of the construction that has led to this growth of population is because of undocumented workers. So it's not a surprise that now that the United States is going after undocumented workers, you're also seeing, well, a decline in population and a cease to the growth that Florida had. In fact, now we have a real estate crash because it all came to an end. And even with all the changes that are happening in Florida and all of the things you hear people say about Florida, the reality is that undocumented workers still consistently contribute to a vast part, a majority of the work in a lot of sectors. Now, I recently moved from one nice community here in Lakewood Ranch to another. At the community where I was before, most of the people there were undocumented that did all of our landscaping and all the work. And, well, at the new community, it's not much different. All right, guys, so this is the Waterside Place here in Lakewood Ranch. During the weekends, you have live music here playing. It definitely isn't for the stingy. It's an expensive place, but a nice place at that. One of the great things about Lakewood Ranch is you see cars like this all the time. In fact, there is a huge car culture here in Lakewood Ranch, and I mean a real car culture. Let me show you guys a few clips from a car show that I went to recently here in Lakewood Ranch, so you guys can see how much of this exists here in Lakewood Ranch. And in Lakewood Ranch, there's quite a few really impressive vehicles you'll see around town. Of course, Lakewood Ranch is a wealthy and expensive area, and something as simple as a haircut can cost you an arm and a leg. So I used to live in this little plaza very similar to this in Lakewood Ranch. And there was a place where you can get a haircut downstairs. And I figured, I know it's going to cost a lot of money because it's Lakewood Ranch, so let me just give it a try. So I run down there, and it turns out that a haircut would cost me something like close to $100. Now that's kind of crazy because I recently saw a video of somebody getting a haircut in Dubai, and it was something like $45 to $55. So it goes without saying that nearly $100 for a haircut is absolutely absurd. So yes, if you want to live in one of the highest rated communities in the country, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Even something as simple as a haircut here is absurd. Araya Blogs is one of my personal favorite YouTubers, And he was recently in Dubai, and I found it interesting that he got a haircut by a Cuban guy in Dubai. And that is because now immigrants are heading to other countries. The United States is no longer the country that immigrants are heading to. And it isn't just the immigration law, it's the hate, the racism, the violence, the crime, the cost of living, how little jobs are paying, how jobs aren't keeping up with inflation. The United States really isn't what it used to be. Sure, here in Lakewood Ranch, where I live, among the wealthy and the elite, things are freaking spectacular, but that's not the reality for everybody and everywhere in the United States. Obviously, you guys know what this is. This is a Lamborghini, a very expensive vehicle, but if you look in the background, you got some guys up there on that roof, and it looks like it might be one white dude and one Spanish dude. I think they're both white dudes, so this is kind of interesting and a new thing to see. And really, it is the ultra wealthy. It's the wealthy, the rich, the ultra wealthy who've created this situation in Florida where there's so many undocumented people because they don't want to pay people. They don't want to pay somebody a hard day's job fairly. They want to pay as little as possible to workers, and it creates a situation where only undocumented people can fit the needs of a society that wants to pay as little as possible for any type of labor whatsoever. I am pretty sure those are some white dudes up there on that roof, and that is a first for me. But they're not doing the entire roof. I think they're just doing like a little part of it, and that is a very steep roof, and they're not wearing any safety equipment. Those are definitely some white dudes on a roof, man. And they're wearing absolutely no safety equipment whatsoever. They took our job. Take a look at this, guys. We got some white dudes on a roof. Never thought I'd see the day. But yes, it goes without saying that it's the rich people with their desire to pay as little as possible for just about everything that have created the situation that we have in Southwest Florida, where most of the labor is done by undocumented people. It isn't a secret that the rich people will do anything they can to get away from having to pay the full price of anything. I'm sure you guys know what the deal is with Montana tags. It's bizarre that we're talking about rich people wanting to pay and cheat their way out of a system in any way they can when, take a look at that. I mean, that's really the issue here. I think the Montana tags clearly illustrate my point for me. And it's bizarre also that these areas that consume the most undocumented workers also happen to be the same people that, for tax purposes, well, if you know where this is going, you know where this is going. It's all one giant hypocrisy. Now, today I was doing some Uber driving earlier, and as you would imagine, there's a lot of people who have hacked Uber accounts, people who have no driver's license or here illegally driving Uber. So you would think that these recent immigration changes would create a very profitable environment for Uber drivers like myself. Unfortunately, Uber today has been so bad that I've literally just turned off the app and quit on it. I made $9 earlier on one ride. I asked the passenger how much he paid for the ride. He told me $22, and I only got 9. That's less than 50%. I also took some screenshots of the rides that were being recommended to me, and a lot of those rides were literally long distances away. For some reason that I don't understand, all the rides that Uber was recommending to me today were like 20 minutes away. So while life here in Lakewood Ranch is extraordinarily expensive, you get something here that I think is worth it. I've been here now for about 3 years in Lakewood Ranch, and I absolutely love living here. Lakewood Ranch is home to a lot of famous people, celebrities, influencers, YouTubers, all that. In my case, when I lived in Alabama, I had a lot of safety concerns with being kind of a little bit known. And well, that just simply doesn't exist here. Lakewood Ranch is home to people like Cletus McFarlane. There's another guy that's got a diesel YouTube channel. Mick Jagger used to live here in Lakewood Ranch, just to name a few people who are known to frequent this area. So it's definitely a place where you'll meet real celebrities. So a YouTuber like me with 200,000 subscribers shouldn't have a problem in this area. There's a lot more wealthy and important people than me crawling around these parts. Oh, snap. Take a look at that. Yeah, buddy. Just yesterday, I had an Uber passenger that recently moved here from Ohio, and she was telling me that she found it bizarre how people flaunt their wealth here. And well, it is true. People are not afraid to show their wealth here because of the safety aspect and the fact that there's so many rich and wealthy people here willing to do the same thing. This isn't a place where people are too concerned with safety, and people are okay kind of flaunting their wealth, and you do see a lot of it here. You don't exactly have to be afraid of showing your money here. So yeah, these communities here require quite a few workers. So what's happening inside of these gated communities and country clubs is that many of the workers are being brought with visas from other countries. They're not undocumented, they're not illegal, but most people are not really aware of what's happening. So let me fill you guys in a little bit on what's going on here in Florida. Is that they've given the green light for people to come to the United States to work from countries like South Africa. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on inside these country clubs here in Florida. The servers, the maintenance staff, they are white English speaking immigrants from parts of the world like Australia, South Africa. So what's happening now inside of these country clubs here in Florida is that you actually have a lot of white people from other countries working with visas, and at a first glance, you can't really tell their nationality. And there's a lot of different visas for a lot of different purposes. Some are student visas. They're not really supposed to be working, but they work either way. Many times, these country clubs are able to pull visas for just regular workers. So at a glance, you would think that now that we're having all these deportations of Latin Americans, that these jobs that are opening up in places like these country clubs would be for American people. However, these guys here, they're not going to do that for a few reasons. A lot of people just automatically assume that these deportations would immediately lead to these jobs going directly into the hands of US citizens. But already the rich and, well, the people with a lot of money are once again finding ways around that situation. So if you thought that these jobs are just going to directly fall into the hands of US citizens, you'd be mistaken. See, these country clubs in Florida are already bringing in waves of people from other countries. They're white, they speak English, and they look like Americans at a glance, but if you get close enough, it might not check out. Well, they already got visa programs, and they're already bringing in people from other parts of the world to do jobs that could very easily be done by Americans. And you'd ask yourself, why wouldn't they hire Americans? Well, for one, these jobs are going to pay these immigrants less than what Americans would do it for. Sure, it is very nice and pleasant to be here in Florida now this time of year, but that isn't always the case year-round. In the summer, being in Florida becomes uncomfortable and the snowbirds and tourists don't show up. So normally, these type of jobs in country clubs would go to people that live here in Sarasota and Bradenton, but what these country clubs are doing is that they're bringing in seasonal workers from other parts of the world, seasonal workers that speak English, are willing to do the job for less. And sometimes for those people, what they're getting paid isn't even really worth it. There's just people that want to be in the United States for one reason or another. So they'll take a mediocre job getting paid barely minimum wage so they can be in the United States, which means that these country clubs are able to continue to pay practically nothing, as little as possible for workers. And these jobs that people thought would be for American citizens are still going to foreign nationals. People thought that these deportations would create jobs for them, but these big corporations are always a step ahead of the game. Of course, the people here in South Florida who work or live in these communities understand what's going on, but the average person in Ohio has no idea. What happens here in these communities is a secret that only the select few who can afford to live in these places know about, which means they don't have to worry about public perception. So if you thought these deportations would equate to American jobs for Americans, that's already not the case. On the intersection of Lakewood Ranch and 70 is a police substation. This is the Manatee County Sheriff's substation. Who do you think mows the lawn here? You think American citizens mow this lawn? In the state of Florida, nobody hires more undocumented people than the state, county, and local municipality for maintenance contracts. And usually these contracts go to the friends of people in local offices. And of course, tourism ain't crap. It's already, and of course, here at the Sarasota airport, the snowbirds haven't returned yet. It's already like mid-November, and the city's still a ghost town. Very few people are showing up. Airport traffic's been really slow. All right, y'all, welcome to the west side of Bradenton. All right, everybody, so this is going to be called the Seaflower community here in West Bradenton. Thousands of houses are going in, as well as shopping plazas, including a Publix. Now, people that live here in West Bradenton are a little upset that these thousands of houses are going in. They believe it's going to create an absolute traffic nightmare. These individuals working over here are definitely Central American because you can hear them screaming, you can hear their accent and their voice. And of course, as we know, the situation with most people working construction in Florida is of an undocumented status. It is now 5 o'clock. Most people are going home by now. These guys are still out here working. Now we're able to walk around this community because it's not going to be a gated community. In fact, I think we're kind of good to go on walking around here. So normally in Florida, walking around construction sites is a no because of the state's felony charges for trespassing into a construction site. So Bradenton is an older core city, which means that for the most part, communities like this one right here are rare. And this is a really large chunk of land. Now they're calling this community a village, and it's going to have a Publix and shops in the front as much as stores as well. And some of these houses like this one here are already sold. Now, I know the people here in Bradenton are really upset about this community. I mean, thousands of houses going in on the west side of the city. So directly ahead of us, in about 10 minutes, you can be on some of the best beaches in Florida. Bradenton Beach, Anna Maria Island. These are the type of places you'd want to live in Florida, but it's very expensive. And there are no communities anywhere on this side of Bradenton because Bradenton's an older city by the water, which means that all the growth has happened in places like Lakewood Ranch, where we were earlier today. There really wasn't much to be said about gated, nicer new homes on this side of the city. So all these new houses and constructions going in on this side of Bradenton are something different for the real estate market. So like I've already said, the people here in Bradenton, particularly that live on the west side of the city, they're not too happy about this community going in. These are new houses. Bradenton is extraordinarily expensive for what it is. Because Bradenton's an older city, a lot of the houses are older. This was farmland that for many years just sat vacant. There wasn't much out here. I actually don't think that this is a bad thing for Bradenton. It's a little concerning that they're building new houses in an area that if there was a storm surge would be very susceptible. This area is close enough to the water where a Hurricane Ian type storm surge would practically leave this community inundated. However, it is very unlikely that this will happen. I mean, it happened in Fort Myers Beach and it happened in Fort Myers, but that's not your average hurricane. That's not the way things usually happen. That was kind of a different circumstance, you could say. So yes, it is definitely within the realm of possibilities that this being so close to the water is susceptible to this type of thing happening. However, Bradenton is close to the water. And what do you think was eventually going to happen to a large piece of agricultural land this close to the water? It was unavoidable that at some point this was going to happen. And I know the people who live here in Bradenton are going to disagree with me, particularly my friends that live here in Palmasola on this side of the city. They really don't want the traffic and congestion. But let's be real. We know what time it is. And people do want to live in a nice gated community near the water. And if I had this kind of money, I would consider moving here. So there are some areas we cannot go into because like here it says sidewalk closed. So there's areas you can go into, areas you can't go into. So like here, we can't go in there. That sidewalk is closed. Now, as you guys know, on my YouTube channel, I've been very skeptical about many of the communities going into Florida. So it may surprise you that I do not feel that this community is going to be a failure. I think this community is going to be a great success because it's a new community in West Bradenton. Who the crap wouldn't want to live here close to Bradenton beaches? So this is the time of day where guys are finally kind of starting to go home. Now, these guys are still working away. You got guys up there still working, building these houses. Obviously, they're all screaming in Spanish, so these guys are all going to be Central Americans, and like the topic of today's video would suggest, good potential, they're undocumented. On the other side, over here, there's going to be apartments. And let me tell you, I have no idea what these apartments are going to rent for. But once these apartments are done, if the rent prices make sense, like I don't know what they're going to cost because, again, there's nothing like it out here. There's a lot of apartments in Bradenton. There are new apartments just south of here, and they're renting for about the same as Lakewood Ranch. If the prices for these apartments are reasonable, I would personally consider moving here because just down that road over there, you are in Bradenton Beach. So here's Jose, a guy who's been very skeptical about a lot of the construction happening in Florida right now, telling you that I think this community is going to be a success for a lot of reasons. Yeah, buddy. Homie got stuck. Yeah, buddy. That's hilarious. Now, this time of day, guys are just now starting to go home. Yeah, buddy. Got that squat. Building away. Building the new America. U.S. citizens? Probably not. Allá faltan unos cubanos para que acaben rapidito. Ahí lo que hacen falta son cubanos y boricuas. Eso sí, trabajan rápido. Sí. ¿Tú crees que van a terminar si buscamos cubanos? Si ponemos cubanos allá arriba, ¿terminan o no? De aquí a un año o dos. Sí. ¿Qué es lo que hace falta ahí? ¿Chapines? ¿Mexicanos? No, chapines. Ya los mexicanos están como los cubanos. Ya están muy huevones los mexicanos. ¿Más mexicanos? Yo creo que aquí lo que falta son chapines. Ya los mexicanos están huevones. Ya los mexicanos están muy huevones. Ya están mezclados con los cubanos. Pero aquí estamos, mi gente. ¿A qué hora están para la casa hoy? Es tardito todavía, ¿verdad? De noche. Pues fuerza, amigos. No, soy youtuber, primo. Sí, para YouTube, para YouTube. Bueno, échale ganas, amigos. As you guys can see, they said they're not going home till nighttime. But beautiful communities. And the other thing going on out here. Ah, los bloqueros. Para todos los ruferos y los bloqueros. Pura gente de trabajo. These guys are working, man. Look what time it is. They said they're not going home till it gets late. So one of the things that this community is going to offer, guys, is this community is going to have like inland lakes, I believe. The next community over is called Aqua, and they already have these. So take a look at the amenities that they have here. They're going to put in like a giant pool. So giant pool, palm trees, all that stuff. The garden club. Look at this, guys. The next community over there is called Aqua, and they have what they have going on over there is like one of those inland pools. It's absolutely insane. It's like an ocean inside the land. It's absolutely absurd. I guess I could show you guys a screenshot of Google Maps because they've already built it. But yes, this is literally going to be like a beautiful community. And I do believe that this community will sell out in no time because like all the people living in Lakewood Ranch would live here because it's more practical. So there's a lot of potential for this community. I do believe these houses are going to sell. And I know the people in Bradenton that live here are not happy about the added traffic. But come on, you live on the route to the beach either way. And did you really think that this area was going to be nothing but farmland moving on for the next 20, 40 years? Get the crap out of here. It was clear that these were going to eventually be developed, and well, here it is. Muchachos. Bueno, un gran saludo a toda mi gente de México, los chapines, los hondureños, los brasileros, toda mi gente que ve los videos de todo Latinoamérica. Los quiero mucho. To this day, the vast majority of new construction is still being done by questionably undocumented people. Of course, we don't work for ICE, so I can't run around asking these guys for their papers, but for the most part, we know that construction in Florida is still moving strong. And for Americans to have new homes like this, it's questionable how reliable our own fellow Americans are going to be building these houses. For the most part, nobody benefits off of these guys more than the builders and contractors, and of course, the individuals who have an opportunity to make a living here in the United States working in construction. If construction sites like this were to rely on U.S. citizens, we all know that this construction site would take 3 to 4 years more than planned. And these construction sites do not close down at 5 o'clock. Like the guy said earlier in the video, they don't go home until the sun's not out. So it goes without saying that the future of construction sites like this depend on our Central American brothers who are here working for us. And whether you like it or not, even once these communities are built, the maintenance of these communities as well. The recent changes in immigration do mean that you're starting to see more Americans in these jobs and that Americans have more possibility to end up in these job sites. But do you really think that Americans are going to go there and install block or entire roofing jobs? Probably not. So this construction site right here allegedly was going to be a homeless shelter for veterans. You know that here in Bradenton, Florida, homelessness is absolutely rampant and everywhere. And at that site right there, they were going to build, or they are building right now, a homeless shelter for veterans. And there's a lot of homeless people in Bradenton. But I find it bizarre, with as much homelessness as is visible here in Bradenton, which every time we stop somewhere at a light, you can see people on the sidelines, right? They're everywhere. With as much homelessness as exists here in Bradenton, that the community would rally against creating a homeless shelter. Okay, they're not just here, they're everywhere. If homelessness was this rare thing, but I think with the situation of homelessness here in Bradenton, it's pronounced enough to where there's a lot. Unless they overdose or get taken to prison, I'm pretty sure most of us understand that the homeless population here is going nowhere anytime soon. In fact, now in the winter months, it actually gets worse. We do have homeless snowbirds. And even beyond that, it was rumored that some of the people that were lobbying against the homeless shelter were actually people in local government. The rumor was strong that it was a local commissioner who was mostly behind this whole passing out flyers thing, warning people about a homeless shelter coming. And that's the bizarre thing about Americans. Americans would rather see their fellow American be homeless than in a homeless shelter. Hostile towards the notion of public assistance. And that's scary moving forward because you don't know where you're going to be. You might work your whole life. Some people get scammed. Some people are victims of fraud. Some people are victims of scams. Some people have health complications. And what's going to happen to people our age when we end up on the sidelines in a wheelchair? Somebody might end up homeless because of a health problem or other circumstance, but after spending so much time on the streets, people do become hopeless. And then now here in Bradenton, we've had some horror stories of people driving without a valid driver's license, sometimes even under the influence, causing accidents. Why, if these are the people that are coming here to work, isn't there an avenue for a Honduran and a Salvadorian to come work construction? It doesn't exist, and it's not going to exist. And I feel like thinking deep on why that possibly would never exist I think racism and hate plays a huge role. Are people just too proud to let these types of people have those opportunities?